Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Crystal Core Radio Podcast. Chris is out this week, knocking out a bucket list item, which we'll get probably a detailed report when he shows back up next week. But today we got me and J-Dub hanging out. We're going to be talking PlayStation. We're going to be talking about the Xbox TGS presentation. But we got a really great comment in chat before, and as a part of our pre-show. And we figured that would be a really good way to kind of start off this podcast talking about, and Cosmos says, Brian was wrong about the PS5 Pro. So we'll see if they follow it up with more detail. But let's talk about the PS5 Pro. It just came out. You secured a 30th anniversary of PS5 Pro, yes. a second one for a friend. So obviously, we saw just yesterday, people kind of like in line and fighting all the bots and the scripts. Did you do it by clicking as a human, or did you implement, some extra little help on the side?
No, I'll tell you this. The first wave, and I don't care what anybody says, when you ordering through PlayStation Direct, there's no bots there, right? Because you physically have to log into your PlayStation account in order to buy one. So you have to authenticate it that way. Now, retailers, October the 10th, there's going to be people that can just go to Best Buy, Amazon, GameStop website or whatever. But in order for you to have purchased any of those items yesterday, you had to pretty much be a PlayStation gamer. That authenticates it with your account, because that's one of the requirements. You had to sign into your PlayStation account, and that helps bypass all the bots that's there. And I think that's why they chose to do it separately from retailers, from their their core audience or whatever. So now granted, some people signed into their PlayStation, they bought one with intentions not to keep it, to probably put it on eBay and make a few bucks on it.
There's always going to be
That's
that, yeah.
always going to be that. But it's not like, when the Xbox Series X launched or the PS5 launched and they kind of just had a free fall, because, there are people that have scripts and have all these bots to go and do this stuff.
And not that I'm going to sit here and side with the scalpers in this case, but I do remember there might be one exception to that rule of scalpers trying to sell the system. And I think it was with the Wii U, because I literally got mine and then they were on the shelf instantly, where the Wii wasn't. And we saw the scalping with the Wii, but with the Wii U, I think a lot of people were just like, yeah, we're good on this one. Because I didn't see that much happening. And, not to say that I feel bad for a scalper, but I'm sure somebody was like, oh yeah, here we go again. Time to make that money. And then they bought up a bunch of Wii U's and they were like, oh no. Oh no.
And you have to be careful, because there was a bunch of scalpers who bought a bunch of PlayStations and Xboxes. And again, we were going through COVID, right? And so things were really scarce. Production was scarce.
Yeah.
And then eventually, once that cleared up, they were stuck with all of this warehouse full of stuff, and you couldn't sell them for $1,500 anymore like you used to. So they had to basically try to give them away.
Yeah. Now Cosmos does confirm that the view that the PS5 Pro are sold out, and so just to clarify for anybody who's might be wondering, I never thought that would be anything other than people wanting a PS5 Pro. As far as that goes, I don't think it's going to have any trouble selling. I think that there is going to be, as some doubt that like I said,
any
what
new
is
tech,
it?
Any new tech.
Does this? What I always wonder is this a sign? Because it's is the PS6 launching at 700? What do you think about that? Because it's I don't think they will. I think they're gonna try to keep that kind of as a
baseline.
Because at some point, and I know the online, wages, at some point, you do push into a price point where you're well, if I just save up another $300, I can get not a high-end gaming PC, but I can get a PC that can do this and other things.
People start looking elsewhere. That's what you're saying. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And that is true in itself, right? Everyone has a price.
Right.
Everyone has for every device is a different price. I believe PlayStation and Xbox has a threshold that people are willing to buy that's much higher than a Nintendo product. Nintendo their cap is a lot lower than because people know what they're getting. It's
Right.
Hey, you listen, the novelty of the handheld is great, but you're pushing into that Steam Deck territory, that ROG Ally, and other things. And technically, I can just pirate your game on those devices. So don't push me too far. So yeah, there is a threshold with that. I do not believe the PS6. I don't take this as a sign that, oh, the next generation consoles are going to be $1,000 or 700. No, 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 no. This
I
is
could see 600 for the PS6, and hear me out on
Mhm.
that, because the thing that I said, especially I tweeted it and I put it in the video that I made about it, was primarily that this isn't the most expensive console that's ever released, guys. Like if you
Yeah,
adjust for
absolutely.
inflation,
Far from it.
3DO is like it's like half price. Like
Neo
we have
Geo,
seen, right.
3DO.
I just
Yeah.
spent $40 on eggs at the grocery store, guys. Like we go through a lot of eggs at the house, but
Atari
that's a lot of
Jaguar.
money. That's
Yeah.
well, and
Yeah.
it's that when it comes down to it, prices they have adjusted. They have
Yeah.
gone up. We're all paying more for everything. And
Yeah.
it for me, and it's like that's why I see frustration in gamers, but I don't share that frustration where they're venting like, oh, if it's
Yeah.
not, 300 or 400 or, even now 500. I was like, I think that is just the natural thing. So I could easily see next generation for PlayStation starting at the 600. No disk drive, mind you guys. So for when it's all said and done, no disk
Yeah.
drive. I don't know if maybe they'll continue to sell an add-on if they're selling. I mean, it makes sense if they're
Well,
selling,
there's
right?
only they released the numbers. 80% of their fan base are digital. 80%. So do you really
I'm a part of that 80%. Like
yeah,
yeah,
you
with
are the
one exception.
direct. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you are I mean,
With
dude,
one
you're streaming
exception,
everything. Yeah.
still in the package because I also downloaded the game. I was like,
Yeah.
so I got the whole like $600 edition or whatever
The whole
with the
yeah,
statue, because I was like, let's
nice.
go, baby. I never
Yeah.
do that with like I would always see them and I'm like, oh man, that'd be so cool to like add to the collection. I never did. And I was
Yeah.
like, with 16, I was like, screw it, let's
Yeah.
go.
Absolutely, absolutely. The reason I say no is because your main console will be the one you want the masses to adopt,
Yeah.
right? You don't have time for them to, because most people will sit around and wait for prices to come down before they buy a console. There's still
Mhm.
gamers right now, even though the Xbox Series X and PS5 are like 449, they're gonna wait till that price come down to 399 or 350 before the mass amount of casuals will come in, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so this they know it's not going to be massively adopted. They know that they're probably going to sell
Right.
between 10 to
Well,
20%
it's the
of
Apple Pro branded model.
yeah,
Like
absolutely. Absolutely.
it's not that we don't want to sell it,
Yeah.
and it's just that this is a premium product for those
Yeah.
who want it. And the beautiful thing about it in my mind is you don't need it. Like I don't need to go out and get a PS5 Pro, and
Absolutely.
because my PS5
Does
still
it's going to run the same games, it's going to
it's
run it
just the
great, it's going to be
PS5
just fine.
this generation has to be like one of the like best performance and
Absolutely.
responsiveness in terms of just like
Absolutely.
jumping in the games. And as I've been
Yep.
playing through Final Fantasy VII Remake,
Hmm.
like it's just a good experience. I was like, this
Yeah.
has like I have not run into so like I ran into some issues in the PS4 and especially in the PS3 era that
Yeah.
it just felt like very cumbersome. And it's like since then, going to PS4 and then to PS5, I feel like we're seeing, a lot of the rust or things like that
Yeah.
around
The
certain.
nuances go away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so easy.
Yeah.
Fire up a
Yeah.
game. I'm in the game.
Yep.
Resuming a game. We're good to
Yep.
go. Yeah.
Exactly. And I do think that PS6, they're going to try to keep it around the same price, 499. I think that's a de facto standard right now, 499, that people are willing
Yeah.
to buy.
Well,
And if
didn't they
you
just increase the price of that? Like at least in Japan?
well, yes and no. And it's because the original how do you call it? The original PS5, right? The first version
Mhm.
launched at 399 and 499.
Mhm.
And so they did a revision. They slimmed it and made it slimmer. They increased the price for that an extra $50. So technically, since they phased out that original 399 model, it looks like it's because it is a
Okay.
$50 increase, right?
Right.
Because you can't go out and buy that original 399 version anymore. They don't make it. So yeah, technically it's a $50 increase. But you are getting more people not realizing you're getting more storage. The first edition had, remember, it was only
Mhm.
700 gigabytes. right? It was 700 gigabyte. It wasn't a terabyte.
784.
784, yeah, gigabytes. It wasn't even a full terabyte.
Right.
Well, now you got the terabyte, and then of course with the Pro, you're getting double that storage. So, you give or take, but the bigger thing is because the yen, right, is
Mhm.
the value of the yen is so low, and so they have to adjust in those
Yeah.
particular markets. Because if not, a bunch of people are just gonna buy over there and ship them elsewhere. So it's a business thing. It's a business thing, and it's an economy. It's the
It's an
economy.
economy thing, and that's where
It's
it's like
economy. It's not, hey, this company wants to
if
be greedy. Could they take a loss? Yeah, they could, but are
well,
you really
we know
gonna?
Nintendo won't be taking a loss. For factual, like I was like,
Yeah,
if I was gonna put money and bet and feel like it's a very safe bet, is that the Switch 2 will be most likely $400. Nintendo will not lose a penny on any
nope,
sale. They
nope.
honestly, with their strategy, it's a really strong play because then
It
they're
works
not
for
having to
them.
subsidize and
Yeah,
hope that they're getting in all these other additional game
yeah,
sales. And
yeah.
so that's where it's like,
They don't rely on a bunch of third party like Sony and Microsoft does. They can be sufficient,
mhm,
because I mean they know, it's almost 1 to 1 their first party is going to sell. Remember, Zelda sold more copies of the game, that in Mario Kart, than they even had Switches out in a while, right?
right.
That's Nintendo's that wild card. They can do whatever they want. They can charge whatever they want, and people will buy it. Um, Sony and Microsoft can't. They can't do that. People will complain. Microsoft, like right now, Mario Kart is the same price now, 7 years later, than it was back when it was. And even then, it was just a port of a Wii U game, right?
Mhm.
Go figure. That Nintendo can do whatever it is they want. Um, I know you just saw the Nintendo guy said that he didn't want to compete with Nintendo, and I mean he didn't want to compete with PlayStation and Xbox for the high end gaming and stuff like that. And that kind of, I always knew that was the case, but a lot of people were hoping that this Switch 2 would have like DLSS and 4K docking and stuff like that.
It
What
could.
he's saying, we're not. That's not what we do. That's not, we don't care to dabble into that market. We're just going to make great fun games that people like, and it's going to sell, and who cares? We're not in it for all the ray tracing and all the other tech stuff.
Right.
We'll leave that stuff to Microsoft and to Sony. That's what I took from his statement. And so there were some guys talking about the Switch 2, and they were throwing all these wild ideas, and I say, guys, you want them to release a Steam Deck level type device, but that Steam Deck launched at like 700, $800. Do
Right.
you really want? Nintendo can't sell their console for that price. It's going to be on the cheap end, 299, $300. On the high end, $400.
Yeah.
I don't see them doing $500.
Now I don't see them going 5, but I can see them doing 4, and that's where it's like
Or
with markets, as we're talking about, like all the
yeah,
different things that are kind of going on. It's like I could see that being 600, and yeah, there's
yeah,
gonna be people who complain, but if
yeah,
nothing else, set your expectations to 600, and if I'm
yeah,
wrong and they come in at 500,
yeah.
well, that's a good day. Like, oh, all right,
Brian, that's another thing I have to. The complainers. All of this stuff is optional. I never, when I go to a car dealership, let's say you go to a Honda dealership, you don't go
Mhm.
there and then you complain about the price and say, but Hyundai is across the street and they're charging this. People say, well, go over to Hyundai.
Yeah.
Like you can't, like, why are you complaining? There's options. You either buy it or you don't. You either keep your PlayStation 5 and don't get a Pro, or you just keep your Xbox Series S and don't get an Xbox Series S, or you just
Right.
keep your old Switch and don't get a Switch 2. But there's just need to, for whatever reason, just to complain and whine over
You
stuff
don't
that's
get
optional.
attention. You don't get attention
Yeah,
by walking up to that salesperson and complaining about the price because he doesn't like it's like all right, he's got to do something else. Online
yeah,
though, both and that's the thing. It's like when it's like online complaining about it. Yeah, people might make fun of you for doing that, but that's still attention. So it's like whether you're looking for negative or positive intention, like that's
yeah,
why I think that kind of boils up to the surface. And it's not that I'm not sympathetic to someone who is like, oh man, I wish I had the money to get that.
yeah,
I don't file that under complaint. It's like, oh man, well, okay, well, I hope that we can figure that out. Like, let's let's come up with a plan, and and it's gonna feel like there's a victory when it's like you save up for something and then you buy it and you're like, yes, and then but that's where it's like, yeah, the complaining online when it comes down to it, there is a degree here though, because like I'm gonna like to pick your brain about this because we're kind of seeing this with the Ghost of Tsushima. This gets into the PlayStation event. I thought that was a great reveal. I thought the Ghost of Tsushima, not just Tsushima, Yotai, as an announcement game, it has a lot of potential. I was like, this is great. Like, I'm really looking forward to it. I got to play a little bit of the original Ghosts when my friend let me borrow his PS4 after mine died, and I was like, this is a really beautiful game. I'm really very excited about it. But then what we see here is, an ex-exec said that like, hey, if you don't like it, because obviously people are upset that the main protagonist is a woman. I think this is just performative upset at the moment because we don't know if it's going to be good or bad. If the game sucks and the story sucks and the character sucks, okay, fine. But let's let it give it a shot and see where we fall on the scale, because it could be truly great. But then what we see is that this mindset where this ex-exec comes out and says, if you don't want it, don't buy it. And we've seen that kind of play out time and time again. I saw Mighty Keith tweeting out that he's confused by it. And I kind of replied, I was like, I think with the piece that's missing is that we've seen time and time again, if you don't like it, don't buy it. If you don't like it, don't watch it. And then later you see the articles saying, well, we're canceled. Why didn't nobody watch this? Why didn't nobody buy this? And it's like, that in and of itself is like, are we just capturing this? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I'll be honest. We live in a day and a time where grifting is at an all-time high. And these are people they're not here for gaming, right? They don't care about gaming, but they're here because the gaming community just opens the doors and lets anybody in. And people come in and say, hey, this is easy pickings. We can come and create a bunch of hysteria about stuff that's whether politics or whether whatever, and we can get a bunch of people to agree along with us, and we're going to capture a bunch of attention, a bunch of likes, a bunch of video views, and make some money and create some outrage, and that's that. I think it's a nothing burger. We've been playing as Aloy for quite a long time. We've been playing as Lara Croft since I was a little kid. We've been playing as a bunch of female protagonists, right? You look at The Last of Us 2, one of the best-selling games out there, one of the best stories out there, and it was so divided, but guess what? It still captured people's attention, emotion, and everything else. There's grifters out there. They're going to complain about everything. Look at the attention about Assassin's Creed. Oh, it has a black protagonist or whatever, black ninja. Oh, that did, it's you have that, and then now you have this. Oh, well, I wanted Jin Sakai. I didn't want this woman, and it's like, listen, if it's not for you, there's things out there that aren't for me, and I'm perfectly fine with something not being for me. But I don't get mad and upset and go outrage and get a gang together and go and attack these voice actors because of their political views and stuff like that. That's why I call them the grifters. Who cares? Like, most of these voice actors, I don't know who they are. Who cares? But the game was great. They did a great job at what they did, and who cares? I don't get to know these actors. I really don't get to care. It's about the character that's on screen when I spend my money and how you can tell the story about what you're trying to convey. I just think it's a nothing burger. I think it's going to fly over, and it is. If playing as a female affects you as a man, I think you have to look at yourself in the mirror, because now it's like you're kind of.
You got to test that gaming crack, because Metroid, Samus, and that was such an exciting reveal. I remember, like, oh my gosh, we've been a girl the whole time. Oh, this is crazy.
This is the crazy thing. I've seen people on Twitter complaining about the new Zelda game, and I was like, guys, you do know
that's where it's
Zelda,
like,
right?
Exactly.
It's like, oh, but I thought the guy was that's Link.
That's
You've
Link.
been trying to save
Zelda's
Zelda
the princess.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm
but that
really
goes to the
looking
credibility. That goes to the credibility.
Well, and that's
These
the
are
thing.
not
That's
gamers.
because I would say, like, there is valid complaints within gaming and what gaming should be and who it should be for, right? So if we're going to take Ghost of Yotai, and it's like, I don't care what the actress's political opinions are. In fact, I don't really care what anybody's political opinions are. I think it's a fun discussion. I'm willing to always have those discussions. and maybe I'll learn something from it. But
Yeah.
she's a voice actress. She was hired for a role. And if she delivers on that character, great. Now, if they go in and say, we're going to insert 2024, 2025 politics into 16th century Japan, it's going to feel weird. It's
Yeah.
going to feel weird. And that's where, like, I'm perfectly fine if someone's like, no, like that's not what I was hoping for. And I was like, I get it, because it doesn't fit the mold. It'd be the same thing for me with my, as a Catholic, if like I was playing Mario and he's like, all right, halfway through World 5, we're going to just pause and talk about Jesus Christ for a little bit. Like, I'd be like, this isn't right. Like, this is weird, guys. Like, why did this get put into this game? It doesn't fit the mold. And that's where, like, I see that can be legitimate complaints that people have.
But gaming, right, in itself is an expressive art, right? These are stories. These are not real world things. These are made up things, right? Assassin's Creed, none of that stuff happens. It's all fake, right? It's all made up. But we get to have selective outrage, and we try to hide behind different things. Oh, it's not about race, or it's not about this, or it's not about gender, but it is. And people like to mask their biases and whatever, and it's fine. But I wanna reply to Chrono in the chat. He said he or she, sorry,
Chrono,
Chrono. The issue with Assassin's Creed wasn't that Yasuke was a black samurai. It literally was. He said it's that we finally get a Japanese setting. Ubisoft decided to completely disrespect the Japanese culture in a ton of ways. The problem is the people who are complaining, they're not from Japan. The people from Japan know the story of Yasuke and know about the history and the things and the tales that came by that. These are, again, it goes back to, I'd say there's just group of guys, right? And they only want to see things their way. They don't care about nobody else. And here's the thing. If I'm a gamer, if every time I jump on a podcast and we're talking about these games and I rate these games extremely low because they don't have a black protagonist, then you would be like, man, this guy, like, why does every game have to be a black guy in it, right?
Well,
But
and
no,
we've been
playing
that
games, right? I'm 43. I've been playing games since I was like 5-6 years old, since the Atari 2600. That my brother and sisters, my sister and my brothers used to have. And there was always a white guy on the screen. There was always a white woman on the screen, or it was just a alien or something like that. I've never once said, hey, why is it? I've never said that, right? I've never, not once in my life, said that. It's great to start having some representation and some diversity in it. Yeah, it's great, but I'm not buying a game specifically for that. You have to make a great game, right? You can have
me
a black
playing as a black
woman on
character
the screen,
doesn't
and if it's a shitty
affect
game,
me
it's a shitty
negatively at
game.
all. Right.
Exactly.
And you bring up a good point, because it's really about gameplay and the quality of the game as opposed to that piece. Because, like, one of the things we've seen, because you brought up an example, is like, you're not looking at like, hey, this game, no black characters, 0 out of 10. Final Fantasy 16, that was an attack that was leveraged at Final Fantasy 16 from various different media sites, saying that, oh, it's too white. And it's like,
it's fake outrage, because if you played the game,
just fake outrage.
You would look
absolutely
at what was going on at that time. There was basically slaves, right? So
that's what the branded were. They were slaves.
Exactly.
And
so,
how bad would it be to see like, hey, we made this game and a bunch of white people are just beating up on these slaves?
But Brian, you played the game. They didn't. That's the whole purpose, right? That's just
there was obviously, like, the protagonists, we're like wanting to help them out, right? And so we go about doing things that make that happen. But yeah, there were some really evil people in that game. And it's like that is a reflection of reality. But this is a way that we can tell that story in a different way. Like, we saw the same thing with Star Trek, dude. I love Star Trek, right? And that's a way, like, we can tell through fantasy, and that's sci-fi fantasy or fantasy, the, like, complicated stories about our failing humanity. And that's where, like, art can truly come into play. Absolutely. But yeah, like, the thing is like, and I would echo a little bit what, like, Chrono, not pushing back on him as much as you did, because yes, there are people who are complaining about that, but I've also seen people have no issue with that, because I didn't care. I was like, oh, cool, like, that sounds awesome. Let's give it, let's see how it plays out. Like, I'm not an Assassin's Creed guy either. Like, I wasn't going to pick it up, not because that there's a Black Samurai, but it's like, I just don't play the Assassin's Creed games. I haven't ever. And maybe they'll be like, oh, this game's so good, Brian, you need to do it. Okay, fine. Maybe I'll consider it. But the other pushback was like on essentially the marketing. And I think that's the other aspect where when we talk about the grift that is playing out online, it's like, are we actively being roped into outrage marketing? Because we've seen how it can really benefit your game. It could really hurt your game. And it's all about kind of structuring that. And I was thinking about that. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, because I was also listening to an upper echelon video today about the company Tenet that was found to be funneling money from like Russian propagandists.
Yeah.
And then that company is funding channels that are like, hey, they actually had an example, pro BLM and anti BLM. And it's like, they're funding this so that both all of a sudden everybody just gets all in a freaking tizzy. And it's like, how much, like, I don't know if it's Russian disinformation, but I'm just like, it feels like there are forces at play.
It all is. It's, think about it. And I'll say this, the reason why is the grifting. The Assassin's Creed game. Yeah, you have a Black Samurai, but guess what? No one ever gave any attention to the Japanese samurai, the lady, right? No one cared that she even existed.
Isn't she a ninja though? Like, not that it's
yes. But I mean, again, these are video games. Well, okay, if they would have removed those characters and put some aliens in that place, would you have got the same thing, right? Aliens technically aren't real, maybe real.
Probably from a different grift, though, right? Like, probably from a different level of frustration.
Oh man, it used to be about humans. Now it's about.
Well, honestly, maybe maybe that's what gets us united as a just a whole gaming community. We got to just all unite under hating aliens in video games.
No, there we go. This is the downside of what they're doing, right? And we have to be careful. Because if we join in on that side, that's going to damage our gaming, right? Because these developers, they lose money, they go out of business. That's one less game or multiple games that we could have had. And eventually, as more and more developers start to go under, what do you remember back? You remember, right? You're old school gamer. You remember back in the day, there was
my hairline gives it away.
There was like 50 different NBA basketball games, 50 different football games, 50 different wrestling games. And then they all consolidated, right? Remember Acclaim? There used to be Acclaim. There's no Acclaim anymore. There used to be Midway. There used to be
accelerated. It accelerated because EA locked down the NFL license.
Yes.
Right. I actually was a 2K footballer. Like that was the brand of football game that like me and my brother and we loved. And we had fun playing that. And then when that happened, all of a sudden you saw this race of, and this is like, I think this is so anti-gaming. This is so anti-consumer, because it's like, instead of like, oh no, they own that entire sport now. Same thing, and it's like, no. And thankfully, and that's like where it's like, and then from baseball, we saw like Sony lock that down, and it's like, okay, but then like all that being said, there used to be all these different games, and they had different takes on them, right? We had NFL Blitz, like that was great, and then I think one of the reasons that I think Blitz actually is a key component in the story about these exclusivities, because essentially the NFL was also getting a lot of heat for injuries. This is pre-concussion movie.
You're right.
And so then they're seeing this ultra violent, kind of game. And then they were concerned. And so they made that change. We also saw the same thing actually happen with Final Fantasy 14. A lot, when 14 1.0 came out, one of the things that was really fascinating about it is that in Japan at the time, lots of reports about these people in these cafes playing until they die.
Yes.
And so they were like, well, how do we address this? And so they made a very non-addictive game, and that ends up leading to it. And so like having these like stories and in a way kind of like trying to pregame, like, okay, well, how do we make sure that this is balanced? And so they build in the fatigue system in 14 and 1.0 as a metric to get people to take a break. Right? And it's like, like I don't, it sucks that people played a video game and for 60 whatever hours straight, and then eventually their body gave out. But like, remember for most of us, that's still the exception, guys. This isn't a pandemic of gamers just falling over, here. So
you as a kid, you remember back on the NES days and stuff, we didn't have saves. We had to press pause, turn our
Leave
TV
it
off,
on. Hope the power doesn't
sleep,
go out.
go to school, come back home, turn the TV on, and hit the pause button and keep going. That's
Yeah.
just. But now then we start getting memory cartridges and save options and stuff, and that allows us to take the breaks and stuff like that.
And that's why, like, when playing
Yeah,
Dragon Warrior for the first time
yeah,
and playing like Warrior 1 and Warrior 2, like
yeah,
that was like, oh, I can, you save it and then you
yeah,
make sure it doesn't turn off while you're saving
yeah.
because that would ruin your day. But it's
Well,
like, okay,
before that, we had the codes. You could put a
oh,
code in
yeah, Mega Man,
and start
baby.
at that, yeah, and start at that level. You don't have to start all back over. So, the code would come on the screen. You have to hurry up and write it down so you can remember it.
Same thing was
You
that
know,
with Tyson as well. Mike Tyson's
yeah,
Punch Out.
Tyson Punch Out.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So then it's like
So,
I remember using those codes in high school
yeah,
because I put all those games on like the computer labs computers and we would play them. And it was like, yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, let's look at that, let's get that code and
yeah,
challenge Tyson, every single time. And I was like, yeah,
yeah.
good
But
times.
I don't want us to get caught up in us joining this group of people because that's going to lead to less games for us. And then after gaming dies, right, these grifters are going to they're going to move on to something else, and we caused it ourselves. I don't want to give that energy from that. And again, if it's a game that's not for you, it's not for you. That's fine. But I don't want us to jump on every single thing and politicize it and make it about something that it's not. Let
Mm.
these developers, right? They have competent writers, they have competent producers. Let them tell the story that they want to convey. I've never said, yeah, the developer should have did this and did that and did this. No, that's their job to make a great story that I
Mm.
would like to find interesting and buy the game and play the game. And playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy VII, just playing those games, it's just a great, awesome story. It
Yeah.
gets you involved emotionally and caring about the characters, especially Final Fantasy 16. I mean, you get to care, some characters live, some die, and you get to start caring about these characters and stuff like that. And that's the whole fantasy about gaming is you actually care about. Now, I'm not talking about the people who just play Madden and 2K, those or COD, right? Those are the gamers that they don't really care. They just want fast Twitch shooting or Twitch whatever. Um, but I don't want that grift to keep on. I think we need to start ignoring this stuff. We need to start supporting these developers,
That's the
giving them
answer.
the opportunity.
Well, the first thing you brought up, especially about ignore, because it's like in my mind, from a developer perspective, like earn the money. Like I have no problem opening my wallet and buying a good game. So it's like, I don't want to like come off and be like, okay, yeah, like here, I'm going to support you every which way. To be fair though, like there are some exceptions, like the Pixel remasters just dropped on the Xbox and I bought that because I was
Yeah,
like, gonna buy this. I've been saying I've wanted it on this platform. I'm gonna buy it because I want to go get those achievements as a part of that experience.
yeah,
But what I want to say here is the ignore, right? There are tools, mute and block.
yeah, yeah,
And I think, and regardless of what side of the fence you fall on, I say I fall on both sides because it's like I see arguments, positives, negatives in both
yeah,
camps. But that block and that mute is the real thing because what we see is that they're like on top of the grift is
yeah,
the other grift. It's that they're feeding on each other
yeah.
for content. And
Yes,
that becomes and drives the narrative where I think a lot of us end up just being like, just make a really good game. And that's
yeah,
and that's and that's where I've seen people say, like, look at Baldur's Gate 3. I was like, that Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't prove this side wrong when you talk to the reasonable people on one
yeah,
on this side, not the extremists on both, but it's like Baldur's Gate 3 is the example of like people saying we don't care about like
yeah,
politics in games. We just want really good games. And we feel like some of these politics are causing these games not to be good. And it's like
yes,
that is like, but it's that feeding on each other. And it's like,
yeah,
I'm like, guys, the solution is, and it's the compulsion of social media makes us want to jump in on and talk about it,
yeah,
want to call like this person a grifter,
yeah.
want to do these things, but all that does is promote it more. And
It
it's like
just, yeah, it
you
just,
gotta rip the band-aid off and you gotta
yeah,
just hit mute so that way it's never in your feed. Like my Twitter feeds are usually just I love scrolling Twitter. I see people
yeah,
talk about how awful it is. And I'm like, my feed is great. I've got memes. I get like a lot of prayer requests because like that's I engage with that a lot. Oh, you had a new baby, or oh, we got a kid on the way. Like, and then I get the fun gaming stuff. Like it's like, oh, cool, Final Fantasy, etc. And I'm like, all right, like so my Twitter experience has been rock solid, but that did come at some level of investment of my time, making sure that I'm only seeing the stuff that I really want to see.
You have your timeline clean where if it's stuff you don't care about, you mute or block, and then that way you create this.
You can mute whole terms and things like that. True. So it's like I don't, like I
will tell you this, Brian. Sometimes there's something that you read and it just makes your blood just boil, and it makes you want to respond. And then I'm halfway through replying or posting, and then I realize you don't have to. You can just block.
I do that. Not just that. Block. Sometimes just writing it and then hitting delete solves the problem, right? It gets it out of my head.
I say, you know what? It's not even worth my time to even because you know what I do, right? I like having fun with the console war, the Xbox versus PlayStation. I stay in my little bubble, my little realm, right? Even all the guys that I reply back from the Xbox side, they like me. They know I game on the Xbox and stuff. They know it's all fun and game, right? I never personal or anything like that. And it's all jokes and laughter. And I think gaming needs more of that. Gaming needs to be a little bit less serious.
Well, and that's the thing with it. Like when I look at what gaming is like I look at it at like a language. We know like gaming is a part of like our humanity, right? Like, and that's not just video games, but just like here's some rules, here's some imagination. You remember being a kid, just like my kids make up games all the time. And that's where it's like the strength of this is that it doesn't matter where we fall on what, political this or tax rate that, or this is what we got to do. Let's go kill that dragon. Yes. And that that builds community and that builds culture in a way that like, that's what I think that's why I look at gaming as a really good tool within balance. Like with anything, you shouldn't be playing until, your family leaves you and whatnot, but finding that right balance ends up being a very healthy thing that can happen. And I think we can get back there. I just think it's going to end up taking people time to kind of wake up to be like, okay, I don't need to engage with this. I want to engage with this. I can mute this. And this is what I want to promote. But we know that I would hope that maybe we'll see some algorithmic adjustments because we know the most emotional stuff, the most toxic stuff, the most dumbass stuff gets the most. And it's that incentive that automatically encourages that, because that temptation to be like, oh man, if I'm growing, like some people talk about it. They're like, I'm growing. They're like, somebody was like giving me grief because like the last podcast I think got like 500 views. It was like, that's great. It's like,
who cares?
Who gives a crap?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Sometimes there's topics that people find interesting. Sometimes they don't. It's okay, guys. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes it's 5,000 views. Sometimes it's 500. It's okay. Look, I'll go on anybody's podcast. It doesn't matter if we're talking about gaming.
Damn it! I thought it was special.
Well, you are. Hey, man, I'm here. Like I'm on a streak now, right?
Yeah, dude.
So
I love talking with you, man. Like that's the thing. Like I look at what, especially with you, whatever you tweet. Like I know people like, oh, Jay. It's like he's satiring. He's being ridiculous. He's taking the extreme view, and it's comedy. It's funny, and and if you view it like that, it's great. If you view it seriously, then I'm sure but that ends up feeding even more jokes.
But even then, with my tweets about Xbox, how are you gonna take it serious? It's about games, right? Just talk crap about PlayStation or whatever, like Nintendo. It's okay. Like I don't hold my PlayStation close to my heart where it's like, oh my God, I got to protect this. It's like,
my kids close to my heart.
That's up to Sony, right? That's up to them to sell people on their platform, not me.
Let's talk about let's get off of the this because like as Denali over this sounds like a tough, intense topic.
The Debbie Downer stuff.
Well, that's what I was like. I really have actually enjoyed this week. I thought, like, from the PlayStation State of Play, we're getting the Lunar remakes. I know that while I was reacting to it, a lot of the people were predicting that it was just going to be remaster after remaster after remaster. But I walked out of that feeling actually really excited about what Sony's got, what they've got cooking. I thought they announced a bunch of really good games, and then I know they're going to be cross cross-platform and going in more places. It's not like every game, but I was like, cool. I was excited to see Lunar because they're making a widescreen, which with
Great
pixel
game, yeah.
remasters, like honestly, like that's really what I want for the game preservation. Just make it look really good on 16:9 because it's everything we have is formatted in that way, and I hate those daggum bars.
Yeah.
But then we had the follow-up with the Microsoft event, and I thought there were some really good announcements from that too. What did you think, and what did you take away from Microsoft at TGS this year?
Well, I'll tell you what. Because the presidents that was set up prior to that, like this is not to blame Phil or Sarah Bond. They never
Mhm.
said what was going to be talked about or shown at TGS, but because the fan base assumed through Square Enix saying that they were going to bring their games to more platforms or whatever, they assumed that Final Fantasy VII
I
and
thought
Final
16
Fantasy
had a
16
chance.
was going to come.
I thought they were going
Uh,
to announce something about 16, like
no.
as they wound down. 7 remake in that mind, though, like we were talking about it kind of in our pre-show chat a
Mhm.
little bit earlier this week, was I don't think we'll see remake until all 3 are done. Like once the series of whatever
Yeah.
follows Rebirth is out, like I could see that maybe then becoming a
I
kind
don't
of a
think
port.
and I could be wrong in the future, but I don't think either of them going to come. And I'm going to tell you
Hmm.
why. Here's my thing. Final Fantasy VII Remake came out on PC years later, right? They ported
Yeah,
it to PC. It's still not on Xbox. Eventually, I
Rebirth
mean, right
isn't
now we
on
just got
PC yet either, and
no. It's
I
going to be
was told that was
years.
I was told it only was a 3-month contract from somebody who had a little bit of inside information on it, meaning it
Well,
probably has
it
it
took.
past that. But good.
I think it took 2 years. It took quite a while for the PC to get Final Fantasy VII
It came to
remake.
Epic first, and then it came to Steam, and so they
Yes,
kind of
yes,
slow rolled it out. And I
yeah.
was like, yeah,
But and then it took Final Fantasy 16, what, a year to go to PC. It just came to PC, so it's been a
a
year.
little over a year though, because it
Yeah, a
came
little bit over a year.
June
Yeah,
June to September, so a
yeah,
year
yeah,
plus. Yeah.
yeah. So just let's just call it a year or whatever. Um, but none of this stuff is still on Xbox, and that gives me two theories of why. The amount of time and effort and cost that it's going to cost Square Enix to port it to Xbox is probably not worth it because the install base is extremely small,
Right.
and because Microsoft don't want to fit the bill for that development, or Microsoft is like, we don't want to spend that money unless you're going to put it in Game Pass, and they're like, nah, we don't want to do that,
Well,
so therefore it's going
yeah.
to bypass it. Whereas something like Pixel Junk games or whatever, it takes 3 people in a weekend to pour something
Yeah,
like that, right?
the cost of that, like I don't really like worry too much about costs, especially as the world is now. It's become
Mhm.
much easier and cheaper to port things. But you bring up an interesting point because like I could see how the Game Pass could be that kind of value add that they're looking for, but they've already shifted their whole strategy with Game Pass as a part of this normal Game Pass tier. As somebody
Yeah,
who's on Ultimate, I get the day and date, but they've already said taken that away for
yeah,
new Game Pass subscribers. So I think they're signaling obviously more changes to come in that vein. So it doesn't necessarily mean like there's a lot of value that they
yeah,
want to go and spend money like, but bringing 16 into Game Pass, I could see it. I could see Game Pass becoming more of, especially when you talk about these games as service games and live, where it's like it's just a prevailing subscription. And we'll have to
yeah,
wait and see if they make that because we talked about it or in a podcast earlier this year. I was like, the day and date is the whole reason to have Game Pass. If you don't have that, what are we really doing
yeah.
here?
Well, why is it
But
even worth it?
Pixel Me
Yeah,
remasters, they're not in Game Pass,
they're
right?
not in
Like,
Game Pass. No, no.
right?
But
Like so,
again, the cost of porting those is nothing.
right?
But the cost of porting these big
But
blockbuster huge games, like Final Fantasy
if
16
right,
probably cost 200 to $250 million to make. I mean, Final Fantasy 7 remake and rebirth probably cost 250 million. They're up there. They're up there with the
Mhm.
Spider-Mans and stuff. These are big, long, epic games, right? I'm like 60, maybe 60 hours into rebirth. I'm right at the end. I'm at uh chapter 14. I'm
Mhm.
right at chapter 14, so I'm basically at the end of the at
How
the
many
very
chapters are in
and
the original
rebirth.
seven? No, remake.
Oh, okay. I can't remember now. I can't
I'm on
remember, but
chapter eight or
it's
nine.
one
Just
game.
to give context.
It's
Right. Yeah.
one game that they
Right.
split into three parts.
Correct.
So,
Me and
but
I always thought of it
yeah,
about the three discs, right? I know
yes,
remake takes place only in Midgar, and then
yes,
Rebirth is going to expand from there. But
yeah,
that's where I was like, I don't know how many chapters, so I was like, I don't really know how far I've come. But
yeah,
I was like, I think I'm either on chapter 8 or chapter 9, and it's like, oh, this is great. Like, I don't know, it's like, is it 100 chapters? Like,
yeah.
I doubt it, but it's at because it's like I kind of get that feel, and it's interesting to see certain scenes that remind
Nah,
me of the
generally they're in
original.
between 10 to 15 chapters.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, I'm roughly on the back half of that. So I feel like
Yeah.
I'm getting close, which is great because I was like, oh, I want to check out Rebirth because as we were talking in the pre-show, like my three games of the year right now would either be No Rest for the Wicked, it
Mhm.
would be The Legend of Zelda, just based off of just touching it, a little bit. I was like, oh, that's definitely going to be. I'm going to be evaluating this as a Goaty, and
Mhm.
Black Myth Wukong. Like
Yeah.
those are some those. I feel like this year for me in games has been phenomenal. Like I'm like I haven't played a game that I've been upset that I played. Like I loved Helldivers too. It was
Some great
fun,
games this
but I
year.
knew that it was just going to be something I was going to pick up and sit down.
Yeah.
Enshrouded, also a really good game. Same thing goes with Power World. Like
Yeah.
it's been a fun
Yeah.
year with me in gaming and with the kids especially.
So
But
so what why do
that's
you
why I want to
what
get to
yeah,
Rebirth because I was like, I've
yeah,
heard people like you and others
yeah,
like it isn't the first. You saying it is not. You're not the first. You're probably the 100th person that says
yeah.
Rebirth is a GOTY
It's
contender for
special. It's
sure.
special. It's something special, man.
And that's where it's like, oh, I want to because like when we get into that season, right? Like I want to be able to be like, okay, how does this like compare? Because it's
Yeah.
like just from an opinion perspective. So I'm trying to formulate that. And being that I have a PS5 after I beat 16, I was like, I'm gonna beat 16. I'm gonna go play 7 remake.
Yeah.
And then the thing about me is always just right now limited on time and having
No,
endless
absolutely.
amounts of games and not enough time to play them.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Astrobot,
Yeah, Astrobot.
GOTY contender. Yeah.
Yep. Astrobots. Again, I say Astrobot, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Um, what else? So Black Myth Wukong. I know Helldivers is gonna be there. What else? What else? A couple of the games that you name are going to be in that contention.
Yeah,
But
No
IGN
Rest
just
is
did
still
it.
in early access, so I don't necessarily think
Yeah.
that those are going to be like eligible for those things. But I'm
Well,
like,
it's
from
Power World, right? So
yeah, Power World. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, same as Power World.
it'll
So
be interesting. That's going to be an
yeah,
interesting kind of thing to see if they add those kind of options in because Power World has been hugely successful and just came to PlayStation, which
yeah,
is exciting to see. But yeah, who knows?
yeah.
I do want to bring back one point because of what I was getting to with the fact that Pixel remasters aren't in Game Pass.
Hmm.
I think that's another pointed sign, right? Because Pixel Remasters has been out on PC, PlayStation, Switch.
Yeah.
It would be like, oh, it just seems like it'd be a fitting thing for it to be in Game Pass, but yet it's not. I like that in and of itself. If that doesn't sound like, that
That
I see red flags with that. Meaning,
that's very telling. That's very
we
telling.
got some laundry on the field, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
So
whoa. And so to
that,
your
that's
point,
telling
yeah,
you. And Brian, you've seen it. You've seen a lot of these developers they're skipping Xbox completely.
skipping it.
Forget Game Pass. They're not even giving you an option to play the game on Xbox.
Well,
And
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 then
then by
this
default, it
yeah.
comes to Nintendo, it comes to PC, it comes to PlayStation just by default. Sony isn't money hatting, Nintendo isn't money hatting.
Sony hasn't had the money yet because
No.
and so the question will be, and I don't know if we'll ever have an official announcement, but I know like because I like Game Pass, like I like it as a parent, I like what opens up for me and the kids. I've was talking with Chrono about this when we were reacting to the thing. The one thing I'm like, why isn't there a Game Pass family? Because I have the family version of Nintendo Switch Online, and that's great. It works
Yep.
great, but everybody just plays on my account or we do the home kind of switcheroo that gets
Yeah.
us basically two Xboxes with that, and it's just annoying, and I'm like, just give me the ability to say, hey, I'm gonna family this and we're gonna make these have all
30,
these
30
extra
bucks, 30 bucks a month, right?
something. Yeah,
You can have up to 5 Xboxes in that home. That was rumors that this was going to happen from Windows Central and for a couple of years now, and that didn't happen. And I think, just my opinion, they need the money. Microsoft needs the money. Xbox needs the money. Um, and
I
these
just wonder how
developers,
much
yeah,
it has Game Pass. Like, has Game Pass one of the reasons why some of these devs are like, we're not going to put it on because we don't want it in Game Pass, and because it's not in Game Pass, you've already conditioned your audience not to be buying these
yeah,
games. I
that's what it
mean,
is.
so it's
That's what
like,
it is.
yeah,
Because I've seen on Twitter a game get announced. Oh, it's coming to Xbox, and the first tweet that's out there,
is it
is it
Game
in
Pass?
Game Pass?
Is it in Game Pass?
And if they say no, it's not in Game Pass, they'll just say, "Well, I'll just wait. Eventually, it'll come to Game Pass."
I
But
think,
if
yeah,
enough people
exactly.
do that, people are going to be like, "These Xbox guys, they just don't buy a game. They don't support games," which is not necessarily the truth. It's just they're waiting for it to come into a service that's on their platform. But that's a Microsoft problem
Yeah,
because they've, like you said, they've conditioned. You're not the first person to say that. Colin, is it
Moriarty.
Moriarty? Yeah, I think he said that, and a couple other
Always
people.
makes me think he's like, he got some Sherlock out there somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people have said that, and they are conditioned where it's Game Pass or nothing. And
Hmm.
it's like, guys, there's a lot of things that come into PlayStation Plus, but
Hmm.
PlayStation guys don't have that attitude because we know if we don't support devs, if we don't buy these games, they're not gonna come to our platform. We see what's happening with Xbox,
Yeah.
and so that's why we're all like, hey, and mind you, PlayStation gamers, they kind of, I mean, we kind of argue amongst ourselves too. Hey guys, go and buy Astrobot, go and buy this, and don't
Should I
just
go buy
rah
Astrobot?
rah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
surprised you hadn't bought.
I've been planning on it. I just is like, I was waiting. Like, now that we're at the end of the month, I was like, okay,
if
cool.
not for you, do
Me
it
and the
for your
kids.
kids
Yeah.
because they're gonna take over your controller. You're
See,
not
but
gonna be able to play it.
that's why I've held
I
off,
know.
because
Yeah,
like, it is, there is a level of competition.
yeah,
And again, like, I like whenever I'm off work, like, my whole thing is like, okay, what are the kids into? And
yeah,
I try to invest in that. And I try not to, again, it's not that it's selfish for me to go play a video game. It could be if I abuse that, but I want to invest in them. And it's like, if I put
yeah,
Astrobot on the PlayStation, I'm going to lose them PlayStation.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, so it's not a $70 expense. It ends up becoming I probably need
Well,
to get on the
I'll
PlayStation.
I'll I'll tell you this, right? So I have multiple PlayStations, and
Yeah.
so I do the whole family share thing where I add the account on both, and that allows them to, you can basically play all the games from the one shared pool.
Yeah.
And so I bought Astrobot one time. My son is in his room. I bought him the Astrobot controller, and he's just having a field day with him and his friends. And I can be somewhere playing NCAA football or Wukong or whatever, and no harm, no foul. But yeah, but that goes back to that. It's like, I think you said it first, was like PlayStation is like the Apple of gaming
Yeah.
because
Well, and
it's
with their
got,
branding in and
with
of
their
itself,
branding.
with
Yeah, it's like
Pro, because like,
once they get you,
it's
you're
not like I'm
gonna,
doing work on this thing.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
all right.
Yeah. It's like, hey, it's
It
just like the
resonates that,
ecosystem.
because it takes that essentially and puts it in instead. Basically, it's a kind of a bait and switch with the word premium. It's like, rather than calling it the PlayStation, 5 Premium,
Yep.
it's PlayStation 5 Pro.
Yeah.
Shorter, easier to say.
Yeah.
But that's how I always kind of think about it. It's like, we're gonna invest in this and make it
Yeah.
what it needs to be, which is gonna be
Yeah.
really interesting. And I hope that people get the value out of it, because it's like,
Yeah.
like, I'm all right. Sony wants to do this. Like, it's gonna be interesting to see, like, well, like, what does that look like market wise? They've already got the market dominance. Does this
Yeah.
help them push over that 100 million mark? Like,
Yeah.
maybe, but if it does, if it doesn't, like, I don't own Sony. I have no
Even
skin in
if
the
it,
game.
one reason I do like PlayStation strategy, because even if it doesn't, right? Like VR, right?
Mhm.
It will never sell these huge gigantic numbers only because the price, right? The point
Yeah.
of entry is so expensive. You didn't think, no, Sony knew that going in? It's
Right.
the added value. You can buy a PlayStation 5. You can play VR. If you want a handheld, you can get the Portal. If you're into audio, you can get the earbuds, you can get the headphones. They have actual monitors with the end zone Sony PlayStation monitors
Mhm.
for the screens and stuff. I mean, they're building a car with a PlayStation in it. Think about it. Like all of the stuff they're doing, the TV shows, the movies, right? Your wife is in the TV shows and movies.
Mhm.
She's not a gamer, but guess what? If she watches The Last of Us or something like that, now she's into that series and now she understands that you're into the Last of Us video game. Now that's something that you guys can bond over and have a conversation where, I'm just things
It's
like
so
that.
funny that you picked that one game
Yeah,
because after starting it and then
yeah,
opening scene, I had to set it down because it caused so much anxiety
yeah, yeah,
within
yeah,
me that I was like,
yeah,
I don't know. Like
yeah,
I'm done.
yeah,
Like it's like I'm not gonna sit here. Like I don't, I'm not gonna put myself in it. Like I got other things I gotta do.
yeah,
And I don't want to sit here and be like doing that. So, but like not a knock against the game, just like I don't play horror games.
yep.
And I don't, these are just some of the things I'm not generally overall interested in. I do have a question or a comment we had earlier in the show, and I highlighted it for later because I think it's an interesting thing. We're talking about obviously all these prices and more. But Cosmos wrote the $700 price tag is to recoup losses from Concord. And that's the other really big, kind of story, just
Yeah.
how much Sony had put in that. Was this the, like one of the, do you think this was why, and it was his name, Jim Ryan, like the former Sony head? Like, is this
President.
one of the things
Yeah.
that kind of like hastened that
Nah.
retirement? No.
Now, my opinion, no, it's not. When people get fired, it's not because of one single thing. And
Right.
here's the thing: he was with PlayStation for 30
20,
years,
30 years. Yeah.
30 years. Matter of fact, him, Sean Layden, all of Yoshida, all those guys are all those Sony heads were they've been at PlayStation for 30 years. People don't know Phil Spencer been with Microsoft for like 30 years,
Yeah.
right? People don't realize that these guys. There's not one thing that makes them depart. You got to realize if you've been on your job for 30 years, right? That's for one, that's a long freaking
A
time. But
long
by
time.
the time you've invested that, right? Probably started at the company when you were 20 years old,
Mhm.
right? You add 30 years to that, you're 50 years old. By that time, making the amount of money that these guys have made in their career, they're
Go enjoy
they're
life.
probably to enjoy life. Nobody wants to be a 80-year-old guy, right? And like I'm glad Jim Ryan said it. He says, listen, I had to get up every day and respond to three different time zones.
Yeah.
Japan time zone, the West Coast, right, and the California office, and then over in Europe, right, over in the UK. So he had to fly to three different places, just him by himself. He had to respond for that every single day. Um, he said, "Listen, I've saw the PS4. I got things prepped for the PS5. I want to leave on top."
Yeah.
Same thing Sean Layden said. He left on top. No one wants to leave while things are bad. You leave it, and like Sean Layden, he left it on a high note, and he handed the keys to somebody else to take over for the PS5 reign. Jim Ryan did the same thing. He felt good with, and you notice someone mentioned this when Jim Ryan left. They didn't just give it to Herman Hulst. They split those duties between two people
Two
that are
people.
in
Yeah.
two totally different time zones, right?
Yep.
So, so you don't have that one person running around doing all of this stuff. Now, one can take care of a set of group of responsibilities for the Japanese market and that time zone, and the other one can handle the other stuff. So the workload is offset because what Jim Ryan was doing, apparently it's like PlayStation is just too big of a brand now. They've ventured off into movies that they weren't before as far
Mhm.
as video game ip. They ventured into TV shows now. They're head of studios now. I have to be involved in these movies, these TV shows, the music, um and all of this other stuff. So it kind of made sense how he explained it. But what did he fail at? What I mean, he was in charge of the one of the most successful uh the brands of all time,
Mhm.
right? There was
Yeah.
no failure there. We could say, oh, this game flopped. Well, guess what? They release in a generation 100 games, 100 IP, 100,000 games. I don't know, but is one gonna make a guy's job go away? No, that's fanboy fodder. To think that what it is. At the end of the day, it's about the dollar bill and how you represent the brand. And I think Sean Layden did it successfully. I think Jim Ryan did it successfully.
Mhm.
He effectively he was in charge of PlayStation at a time where the competition was trying to buy all of gaming.
Right.
And he in retrospect, the competition bent the knee to him. They
Mhm.
bent the knee. They ended
Yeah.
up putting all their games
Right.
on the platform.
When we look at
They
what's
said
happened
we
with
don't want to
Microsoft
compete
this
with you
year.
anymore. Yeah, we
Exactly.
don't want to compete anymore. We want to just work with you and put our games on your platform, and we'll share the money, whatever. And that. So where did he fail at?
I don't know.
That's just my take on it. I could be wrong. Maybe because of Concord, he was fired and they canned him and
No,
stuff.
I don't
But
think he was fired, but it's just like
I
it.
know.
I think because of when he retired, I was like, yeah, his excuse sounds very reasonable, especially because it's like he's in his 60s. Like he's earned this. You know, it's like
Everybody
you
retires in their
I
60s.
will retire. Like that is
I'm
the
40.
goal.
Listen, I'm 43. I plan on being
Hey,
retired by
we're
the time I hit
81 babies together, buddy.
81, man. 81.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I knew I
February
loved you.
81, man. And
Oh,
I'll tell
February.
you,
Okay. So you're
yeah,
my senior. I got it. All
yeah,
right.
just about you. But I'll tell you what, I my goal is to retire by the time I get 50,
Yeah.
but that's
That's
not
the
gonna mean
fire
that I'm
movement,
just
right?
gonna
That's the fire, right?
I'm not. It's not that I'm gonna just sit home and just get fat and do nothing. It's not that I'm gonna go and spend all my money traveling and stuff. It's like, no, I'll find something else to do. I'll go back to teaching, right? I'll go teach at a college or something like that. I'll find other
I'll
things to do. I'll
stream,
play
because
golf.
people ask me like, Brian, you want to be a full time, content creator or whatever? It's like that's what I call retirement. Like when
Yeah,
I get to that
yeah,
point where I'm like, all
dude,
right,
we can do
I'm
that.
gonna, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That's what I was like,
think
dude,
about it. But
we have this
we live in
great
a day
concept.
and age,
Yeah.
bro, where we can podcast from our homes,
Hmm.
make a little money, play video games, relax, and it's really not working. We love games, and we're sitting here talking about video games. Like,
It's great. Like
what
this
a
is,
great age and time to live in, right?
and the thing that still boggles my mind to this day, people listen to us talk about video games and
There
then
you
they
go.
make comments why we talk about video games,
There
and
you
it
go.
drives the show. Like that in and of itself is like, I feel like, what else is there? Like you ever like feel like, like, oh, I'm a king of my castle. Like I have
Yep.
a Mog that's blended with Mega Man. My wife
Yeah.
got that for me. Like
Awesome.
what
Yeah.
else? I don't know
Yeah.
what to ask for. Like I'm like
Yeah.
I'm here. And yes, at
Yeah.
some point I would like to not have to go work and all that and just
Yeah.
kind of just do what I want. But
Yeah.
that's the goal. I don't think I'm going to get there by 50. Because your kids are grown. I still have to get them through high school and college
Yeah.
and whatnot. So it's like
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think
and
I'll
that
make it.
again, that's just a personal goal for me, right?
Yeah.
Whether I hit
It
that or
sounds
not,
like
it's
yeah.
it's
Oh no,
I,
you
I
hit
would rather
55. Oh no, you hit 60.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
retired. Oh no.
I would rather target that early than to target 65 and fail there because hey,
Yeah,
hey
exactly.
man, I just
That's my
I
mom's
just never
approach
wanted to be the
to her Catholic faith. She's like, I'm gonna shoot for heaven and hope for purgatory. And it's like,
there
all right,
you go.
mom, way to go.
There you go.
It's like, all right,
There
at
you
least
go.
there you go. The
Yeah, aim high,
one
man.
aim high. The one thing that we were talking about privately, and we have no mention of this, but I do want to next year figure out how we can go to an Astros game and just get some, get some. I love the
Absolutely.
Astros, so
Absolutely.
yeah, that's
Well,
gonna
I'll tell you
happen.
what, man. We'll collab. I'll get some tickets. We'll get some great tickets, and you can come down. We'll go there, man. Have some popcorn, beer, and may bring a laptop or whatever, and just do a little podcasting and just let
Hey,
everybody know, hey, man, this is what gaming is all
live from
about.
the Minute Maid Stadium today.
Yeah, there you go, man.
Perfect. All right, Jay, where can people find you, sir?
You guys can find me on Twitter at JDubCity16. I'm always trying to keep you guys laughing with all the gifs and the memes. You know what I mean?
You call them GIFs? Oh,
Well, so there's a debate, right? It's
yeah, of
gifts or
course.
gifs, and so it depends what time of the day. I'll call it this or that, and
Okay,
to see
interchangeable.
if someone tells me, yeah, because if you do the whole internet thing, people will say it's like 50-50. It's like a
Yeah,
toss up,
there you go.
and
All right, guys,
who knows what's the right term.
be sure to go follow Jay and just know, yeah, it's if he's here to make you laugh, and hopefully you get some fun with that. All right, that's going to wrap us up for today. We won't do 20 questions because we don't have a panel, and it ends up just kind of like beating people up. Thank you, Jay, for joining us. We'll be back next week. Our show next week is going to start at a different time, 3:00. Usually we do this at 11:30 Central every week. And yeah, thanks, guys, for being here. So many great chats. And also thank you, Solemn, for both of your membership that is. Let me just pull back up that comment because it had the time. This is, I guess, the updated StreamYard to have it 27 months and then also gifting out a membership. So thank you guys for that support. But we're going to wrap up and we will see you next week.